Before we enter today's dark and chilling story, make sure to subscribe for more mysteries like this. And one question, where in the world are you watching from at this moment? Let's start our video. There are places in America where the soil remembers what people try hardest to bury. On August 11, 1843, in the thick heat of a Louisiana summer, a plantation overseer claimed he saw the earth beneath the Harrow Estate shifting like a living thing. Before dawn, 5 women were found trembling inside the slave quarters, each whispering the same impossible confession. They said a shadow had walked between their beds. They said it was not a man. And they said it spoke their names with a voice that felt older than the plantation itself. For more than a century, these events were sealed inside parish records, hidden behind church signatures and private family payments. But recently, a stack of forgotten letters resurfaced from the basement of a shuttered seminary. The handwriting belonged to Eleanor Harrow, the plantation lady who presided over the estate with refinement on the surface and corruption beneath it. In these letters, Eleanor reveals an illicit fascination with a quiet, mysterious slave named Isaiah, a man purchased from a New Orleans broker who refused to explain where he came from. Isaiah worked alone, kept his eyes low, and wore a carved bone pendant tucked beneath his shirt. Eleanor would later claim she recognized the pendant in her nightmares long before she ever touched it. Nothing seemed unusual about him at first. But then she wrote a sentence church archivists tried to erase. When he touched me, the lamps died, and something in the walls awakened. Within weeks, every woman on the plantation, enslaved and free, began reporting visions, whispers, and a presence watching them from the dark corners of their rooms. And everything pointed back to Isaiah. Isaiah arrived at the Harrow Estate in the spring of 1842. No bill of origin, no place of birth, no last name. The broker who sold him avoided eye contact, signing the transaction with a trembling hand. Eleanor wrote that she had never seen a man look so relieved to be rid of another human being. Isaiah spoke rarely. When he did, his voice carried an accent no one recognized, soft, uneven, shaped by places that had no maps. The other enslaved workers kept their distance from him, not out of fear, but reverence. They said Isaiah carried something with him, something not meant for white hands to own. But Eleanor was drawn to him. In her letters, she described it as hunger. Not of the body, of the soul. She wrote that the house itself reacted to him. Doors swelled shut, clocks stopped. The family Bible on her nightstand developed mold on the page where his name had been written in the daily ledger. The bone pendant he wore was carved with symbols no priest could decipher. Eleanor touched it only once, but that was enough. She claimed it felt warm, alive, like an animal heart. Within a month of Isaiah's arrival, Harriet, one of the younger enslaved women, collapsed during morning work. She swore something had entered her in the night, without touch, without form. She said she felt her blood rearrange itself. That was the first. By autumn, it would not be the last. The seminary found Eleanor's earliest letter sealed inside a rusted metal box, hidden beneath a floorboard. The ink had bled from humidity, but the words were still legible enough to haunt. She described seeing Isaiah standing in the fields long after everyone else had gone to sleep. He faced the tree line, whispering to something unseen. She wrote that his shadow stretched unnaturally, bending toward the woods as if pulled by strings. Her husband, Thomas Harrow, dismissed her concerns. But several workers said the same thing: Isaiah's shadow did not move like a man's. At night it lengthened, split, folded. Eleanor confessed in that letter that she followed him once. She watched him kneel in the soil and press both hands into the ground. The earth pulsed beneath his palms. A week later, the first pregnancy appeared, Harriet's. Too sudden, too impossible, too perfectly timed. The church doctor accused Harriet of lying. But Harriet's body told a different story: no physical sign of violation, no explanation for conception, except that her heartbeat matched the rhythm Eleanor had seen pulsing in the ground. Eleanor ended the letter with a line written so forcefully the pen tore the page. Isaiah is not alone. Something travels with him. By winter, 8 women, enslaved and free, reported symptoms identical to Harriet's. Nausea. Sudden fainting. A strange heat beneath the ribs. And a persistent sense that something was growing inside them at a pace that defied nature. Thomas Harrow ordered silence. The church demanded obedience. But whispers spread faster than sermons. The overseer claimed he saw Isaiah standing in the women's quarters late at night, even when the doors were barred. When he confronted him, Isaiah simply stared, expressionless, until the overseer turned away, unable to raise his voice. Medical explanations failed. Several of the women were newly widowed or had not shared a bed with anyone in months. Eleanor noted that one woman, Ruth, had never been touched by a man in her life. Yet she was the second to show signs. The pregnancies followed no pattern. Different ages, different bodies, different circumstances, yet all shared the same impossible rhythm in their pulse. Eleanor's journal entries darkened. She wrote that the house smelled of earth, wet, breathing earth. She wrote that Isaiah's presence made her bones feel hollow. She wrote that every woman who suffered these symptoms had dreamed of the same figure, a faceless shape standing in the doorway, speaking in Isaiah's voice. But the worst realization came when Eleanor discovered her own condition. She, too, carried the same impossible pulse. The Harrows requested the parish to intervene. They expected priests. What arrived were archivists. Stern-faced men with ink-stained fingers who rarely looked anyone in the eye. They questioned the women not with compassion, but with cold methodology, writing down their statements as if studying an epidemic. But when they questioned Isaiah, something changed. Every candle in the room extinguished. The archivists refused to include this detail in the report, but Eleanor wrote it down herself. They asked Isaiah where he came from. He did not answer. They asked why the women dreamed of him. He remained silent. But when they asked if he had brought something with him, his eyes flicked to the bone pendant, and the youngest archivist stepped back in fear. The investigation lasted 3 days. On the 4th morning, the archivists vanished. Their carriage was found abandoned near the estuary. Their notes were gone. Their disappearance was never recorded in church history. But Eleanor found a scrap of parchment near the well, a torn corner believed to belong to the archivist's report. It contained only one sentence. The entity is older than enslavement, older than this land, and uses the vessel called Isaiah. Eleanor realized then that Isaiah was not the source. He was the doorway. By early spring, the women's conditions escalated. Their bellies swelled too quickly, their eyes changed color in the candlelight, and their dreams synchronized. Every woman reported seeing the same place. A vast field beneath a black sky, where roots slithered like veins and something enormous writhed under the soil. They heard a heartbeat. Not their own. Not their unborn children's. Something else. Eleanor recorded that she felt a presence inside her mind. It spoke without words. It urged her to return to the fields at night. It guided her toward Isaiah as though he were a conductor and she a vessel. The estate doctor attempted an examination on one of the women. He lasted less than 2 minutes before collapsing, clutching his chest. He claimed he heard multiple heartbeats echoing through her ribs. Rumors spread through the region. Neighboring plantations sent inquiries, some out of concern, others out of morbid curiosity. But the Harrow Estate allowed no visitors. Thomas Harrow ordered silence. Eleanor began to question whether she was protecting her family, or protecting the thing growing inside her. Because beneath the horror, she felt something else. A pull. A hunger. A belonging. She wrote. Whatever this force is, it chooses women. It claims wombs the way roots claim soil. And the soil beneath the Harrow Estate had begun to shift again. The night it happened, every animal on the property screamed. Horses kicked their stalls, dogs clawed at the dirt, chickens ruptured their own wings trying to escape the coop. The air thickened with static, a heat that rose from the ground like a fever. Several workers claimed the fields glowed faintly, as if lit from beneath by buried fire. Eleanor felt the presence inside her stir. Her pulse aligned with the land. The unborn seemed to listen. She walked outside barefoot, drawn by something she could not resist. She found Isaiah already standing in the center of the field, bare-chested, eyes rolled skyward, the bone pendant trembling against his skin. He spoke her name without moving his lips. He told her the land had been waiting. And that the children inside the women were not his doing, but a reclamation. Behind them, the soil rose and fell in waves. Roots burst from the surface like skeletal fingers. The earth's heartbeat quickened. Then, for the first time, the entity revealed a portion of itself. A mass beneath the ground shifted, causing a mound of dirt to rise several feet before collapsing again. Eleanor fell to her knees, gripping her abdomen. She wrote later that her unborn child responded, not with fear, but with recognition. Thomas Harrow tried to pull her away, but the ground split open near his feet. He fled, convinced Isaiah had summoned Satan himself. But Eleanor knew the truth. Isaiah was not summoning anything. He was obeying something that had been here long before plantations, owners, or even the church. As the pregnancies progressed, a subtle but terrifying change overcame the women. Their personalities softened, then hardened. They grew calm, serene, almost devotional. Their eyes followed Isaiah wherever he went. None of them seemed to recognize Eleanor. They stopped calling her Miss Harrow. They began calling her the barren one, even though she herself was pregnant. When Eleanor confronted Harriet, Harriet smiled, a strange, peaceful smile, and told her, "You carry the smallest of them. But you do not belong to the root." Eleanor's blood ran cold. She asked what the root meant. Harriet answered, "The thing beneath us." Rumors spread among the women that Eleanor's child was weak, human, unworthy of the entity's plan. Several of them surrounded her during morning rounds, forming a silent circle. They touched her stomach without permission, murmuring unintelligible phrases. Isaiah watched from a distance, expression unreadable. Eleanor realized she was no longer the mistress of the estate. She was merely another vessel, and not even the favored one. Fear crept into her letters. She wrote, "I feel as though the child inside me is hiding from the others." But she did not yet understand why. The truth would surface when the first woman gave birth. Ruth, the oldest of the afflicted women, went into labor first. Her pregnancy had lasted only 3.5 months. The contractions came suddenly, violently, causing the walls of the quarters to tremble. The midwife refused to touch her. She claimed Ruth's belly felt like it was pulsing independently of her heartbeat. Eleanor rushed to the quarters. She arrived just as Ruth began screaming, yet there was no pain in her voice, only exaltation. She kept repeating Isaiah's name. When the birth concluded, the midwife fled the room, gibbering like a madwoman. Eleanor forced herself inside. The newborn was not deformed, not monstrous, its appearance was perfectly human. But its eyes opened immediately. And they were the color of the soil. Dark. Wet. Alive. The infant did not cry. It stared. And behind its gaze, Eleanor felt a presence studying her, judging her, through the small, silent body. Ruth held the child with unnatural strength. She whispered, "The root has sent its first." Eleanor wrote that her own unborn child recoiled inside her at that moment, as if terrified. 3 more births would follow within days. All the infants looked different, yet all shared the same soil-dark eyes. Isaiah never approached them. He never touched them. He simply watched, as though waiting for something else to arrive. The neighboring plantations grew suspicious. Several sent writers claiming they heard chanting at night, saw lights in the Harrow fields, or smelled smoke drifting from the estate. Thomas Harrow, now frantic, ordered the women and infants isolated. But when he attempted to move them, the ground itself resisted. Wagons sank into soft earth, doors jammed, and tools snapped as though the land refused to cooperate. Then came the deaths. Not of the women, but of the infants. All 4 of the newborns died within days, yet their bodies showed no signs of illness. Their soil-dark eyes faded to white within hours of death, as though whatever had lived behind them had withdrawn. Eleanor tried to bury the first infant in a traditional grave. But the shovel shattered. The earth refused to open. Thomas tried burning the body. The fire extinguished itself. Finally, Harriet instructed them to place the infants directly on the soil. Only then did the land soften. The bodies sank into the ground without assistance, disappearing completely. The soil beneath them pulsed once and returned to stillness. Eleanor wrote, "The earth takes back what it sends." But if the youngest were being reclaimed, what was the entity waiting for? Her own child kicked then, hard enough to bruise her skin. As if answering the question, with the infants gone, fear spread. The enslaved workers whispered about curses, ancient spirits, and bloodlines marked for sacrifice. Some attempted escape, but every path out of the plantation was blocked by collapsed trees, wild dogs, or sudden storms. The estate was being sealed in. Isaiah remained calm, almost detached, as though none of the horrors touched him. But the women followed him like disciples. They began digging in the fields without instruction, carving narrow trenches in spirals that matched the carvings on Isaiah's pendant. Eleanor asked Isaiah what they were doing. He answered only, preparing. Preparing for what, he would not say. Thomas Harrow attempted to stop the digging. The women surrounded him in silence, their expressions empty, their movements synchronized. He backed down, shaken. Eleanor wrote that she no longer recognized her own home. The fields were carved with spirals. The house smelled perpetually of damp earth. And the women hummed a rhythmic tune that had no melody, just a steady pulse. Her own pregnancy advanced at a normal speed, unlike the others. She took this as a sign. She believed the entity favored the other women, but not her. Yet Isaiah's eyes lingered on her longer every day. As if waiting for her moment to arrive. One night, Eleanor awoke unable to move. Her limbs felt restrained by invisible weight. The air was thick, suffocating. She noticed the walls were vibrating. Not trembling, breathing. Roots pushed through the floorboards, weaving around her legs, spiraling up her bedposts. The entire room smelled of soil and rot. Through the window, she saw the women standing motionless in the moonlight, their faces tilted upward, eyes rolled white. Then she heard it. The heartbeat. Slow. Heavy. Coming from the earth itself. Isaiah stood beneath her window, staring up at her. He whispered, not to her, through her. "It is choosing." Her unborn child responded violently, as if trying to escape her body. Pain ripped through her abdomen. She tried to scream but her voice failed. The roots tightened around her legs. Something cold touched her spine. For a moment, Eleanor believed she would die. But the heartbeat slowed. The roots retreated. The women collapsed. Isaiah disappeared into the fields. Eleanor's final line that night was almost illegible. "It touched me. It rejected me." She did not yet understand that rejection came with a cost. The entity had rejected Eleanor, but not her unborn child. Her pregnancy slowed. Stabilized. Strengthened. The midwife, now half-mad, insisted the child inside Eleanor was closer to them than to you. Eleanor refused to believe it, until the night she felt the child shift positions with deliberate intent, as though turning to face her from within. Meanwhile, new births continued among the enslaved women. Each infant was born silent, eyes wide open, staring with unnatural intelligence. Each one died within days. Each one sank into the soil like a seed returning to a garden bed. But then came baby number 9. Born to a woman named Miriam. This infant did not die. It grew rapidly, weeks of development occurring in hours. By dawn, it could lift its head. By the next morning, it smiled. Eleanor wrote that when she held it, it felt too warm, too heavy, as if filled with dense clay rather than flesh. The other women called it the first root. Isaiah avoided the child. He refused to look at it. Eleanor realized then that Isaiah was not in control of the entity. He feared what was coming. And every time the infant blinked, the lights in the house dimmed, though no lamps were lit. Eleanor could not explain why, but holding that child made her own unborn child grow still with terror. By midsummer, the Harrow Estate resembled a ritual ground. The women had dug spirals across the fields, trenches winding outward like ribs of an enormous, buried beast. No one told them to do it. They worked without rest, their bodies fueled by something invisible yet merciless. Eleanor walked among them, unseen, unacknowledged. The trenches emanated heat. Steam rose from cracks in the soil. Footprints vanished seconds after forming, as though swallowed. Thomas Harrow attempted to burn the spirals. The flames refused to spread. He struck one of the women in desperation, and the soil beneath him erupted in a geyser of dark mud, dragging him waist-deep into the ground before releasing him. He crawled away, broken. Eleanor wrote that she found Isaiah at the center of the largest spiral, staring downward. She asked him what he saw. He answered, "It is waking." When she demanded to know what it was, Isaiah touched the ground and whispered something in a language she did not know. The soil responded with a pulse. Eleanor collapsed to her knees. Every unborn child inside the plantation pulsed with the soil. And then Isaiah told her the truth. The children are not meant to live. They are roots, seeking the one who can open the way. Eleanor realized her child had not been chosen because she was special. Her child was being saved for the final moment that it began without warning. 18 women went into labor simultaneously. The air turned metallic, thick with humidity. The estate workers fled into the woods, abandoning tools and carts, insisting a demon was being born. Eleanor watched from the doorway as the women convulsed, their bodies shaking with a rhythm identical to the heartbeat pulsing through the ground. The deliveries were swift, minutes, not hours. But unlike previous births, these infants did not cry, did not blink, did not breathe. They lay motionless, yet alive. Their bodies vibrated faintly, like tuning forks. As soon as they were placed on the soil, the ground softened and swallowed them whole. 18 infants consumed by the earth. The women did not mourn. They bowed their heads as if performing a ritual of offering. Then the soil surged upward, creating a single, massive mound in the center of the field. The mound pulsed, expanding and contracting. Eleanor's unborn child thrashed violently, causing her to collapse. She saw Isaiah fall to his knees, his face contorted in anguish. He whispered one word. Soon. That night, the field glowed from beneath like a lantern buried under wet cloth. The entity was no longer dormant. It was preparing for its true vessel. Thomas Harrow had spent weeks descending into paranoia. He accused his wife of witchcraft, the enslaved women of mutiny, and Isaiah of conjuring spirits. The truth was too vast for him to understand, and it destroyed him. In desperation, Thomas shot Isaiah. Point blank. Twice. Isaiah fell. The women screamed. The roots reacted instantly, erupting from the earth, binding Thomas's legs and dragging him across the field like a carcass. Eleanor fled toward her husband, but the ground opened and swallowed him ankle-deep. He fired his gun wildly before the soil surged upward, covering him chest high. His screams became gargled. His eyes bulged with terror as the land consumed him inch by inch. Isaiah, still bleeding, rose to his feet. The bullets lay on the soil beside him, pushed out of his body like seeds expelled from bad fruit. Eleanor froze. Isaiah's blood was not red. It was black, thick, and grainy like wet earth. He looked at her with hollow eyes. "It is not done with him," Isaiah whispered. A minute later, the ground went still. Only Thomas's hat remained on the surface. Eleanor realized the entity did not simply kill. It reclaimed. The last surviving letter from Eleanor Harrow was dated 2 days after Thomas's death. Her handwriting was frantic, streaked with soil as if the ground itself had tried to reclaim the parchment. She confessed that her unborn child no longer felt human. Its movements were deliberate. It never slept. It responded to the heartbeat in the earth. She wrote that she could hear whispers coming from beneath her floorboards, voices calling her name, urging her to come to the fields. Urging her to return what was borrowed. Eleanor tried to flee the estate. The road collapsed. The trees blocked the path. The sky darkened. She was trapped by the land that had once belonged to her. Her final paragraph revealed a horrifying truth. The other women were vessels. Their children were keys. But mine is the door. The letter ended with a smear, as though snatched from her hand. No one ever found Eleanor after that day. Only her final scream was recorded by the midwife, echoing across the estate at dawn. At dusk, a tremor shook the estate. The trenches glowed with faint red light. The spirals filled with a thick, black substance resembling blood. Isaiah staggered toward the field, his body decaying, his skin cracking like old bark. The women followed in silence. The earth's heartbeat thundered. Eleanor's scream cut through the air. She was dragged into the center of the spiral by invisible force, her body contorting in pain. She begged Isaiah to help her. He whispered, "I am only the messenger." Her child began to emerge, yet no blood followed. The shadow of a shape extended from her body, taller than a man, thin as a branch, faceless. The ground split open. Roots surged upward, twisting around the newborn shape to pull it gently toward the soil, as if greeting an heir. The entity rose beneath the field, a colossal mound shifting like a living creature beneath a blanket of earth. The women fell to their knees. Isaiah collapsed, finally free of the entity's grip. The newborn creature opened its eyes, dark, wet, metallic. The soil answered. And the door opened. The earth devoured the plantation within hours. Buildings tilted and sank. The house folded into the ground like wax melting under flame. The cotton fields shriveled, their roots ripped away by something deeper. The enslaved workers who escaped told stories of a creature made of soil and shadow walking through the fields, a thing carrying the scream of a woman who had once been Eleanor Harrow. Others said they saw the women bury themselves willingly, sinking into the dirt as though returning home. Only Isaiah remained above ground, watching the destruction. His body cracked open like dried clay. He whispered a single phrase as he dissolved. "It has taken its heir." By dawn, the estate was gone. In its place lay a smooth, circular plain of dark, breathing soil. The parish declared the land cursed. The church sealed all records. The region avoided the area for generations. In the early 1900s, surveyors attempting to map the region reported strange phenomena on the land where the Harrow Estate once stood. Compasses spun uncontrollably. Horses refused to cross the boundary. Several workers claimed the soil felt warm, pulse-like. Digging tests were performed. None succeeded. Every machine broke. Every shovel bent. Every hole filled itself within minutes. One surveyor disappeared entirely. His boots were found partially submerged, standing upright, in the center of the plain. Those who camped near the site described dreams identical to the women of 1843. A field under a black sky. Roots like veins. A massive shape shifting beneath the soil. Modern historians dismissed the Harrow Estate story as folklore. But the seminary documents, Eleanor's letters, and the parish seals tell another truth. The entity never left. It sleeps beneath Louisiana's forgotten fields, waiting for the one who will call it again. Some nights, locals say the ground still pulses. Some say they hear a heartbeat. And a few claim that if you stand at the center of the plain, you will hear a woman's whisper. It did not end with me.